The curse of clarity, why seeing the world too clearly pushes genius to the fringes. Have you ever felt like no one truly understands you, not in a sad, dramatic way, but in a deep, fundamental sense? Like you're speaking a different language, even when you're using the same words as everyone else? If so, you're not alone, and you may be smarter than you think. Today, we're going on a journey into the mind of one of the most misunderstood philosophers in history, Arthur Schopenhauer. And through him, we're going to uncover why intelligent people are so often alienated, rejected, or even feared by society. I want you to imagine someone who sees the world not as it appears, but as it truly is beneath the surface, beyond the illusion, past the social games everyone else is playing. This person doesn't just observe, they see. They notice the lies we tell ourselves to sleep at night. They see the masks people wear. They understand that much of what we call normal is simply a shared delusion. Now ask yourself, would such a person be welcomed by society? Would they be adored, or would they be pushed to the edges, dismissed as negative, weird, or too serious? Schopenhauer believed that the more a person understands reality, the more they will suffer and the more they will be misunderstood.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
In his view, the world is driven not by reason, but by an irrational, blind force he called the will. This will is endless, insatiable, and unconscious. It pushes us to want, to crave, to chase after things, status, love, security, without ever giving us lasting satisfaction. The average person is so immersed in this cycle of desire that they never stop to question it. But the intelligent person? The philosopher? They do. They pull back the curtain. They see the absurdity in chasing things that never last. And this clarity, this awareness, is precisely what alienates them. Because society runs on illusions. We are taught from birth to believe in progress, to believe that happiness is always just one achievement, one purchase, one relationship away. We are taught that success is measurable, that life has a meaning we can easily define. But what happens when someone stands up and says, "Wait, none of this is real"? What happens when someone dares to say that the emperor has no clothes, that life may be inherently meaningless, or that we're all just trying to escape suffering for a few brief moments of pleasure? They're not applauded, they're not thanked, they're feared, or worse, they're ignored. Let me ask you something. Have you ever tried to explain a deep realization you had, something that changed your entire view of life, only to be met with blank stares or polite nods? That is the experience of the intelligent person in society. It's not just that they see more, it's that they are alone in what they see. And Schopenhauer knew this intimately. He spent most of his life isolated, his work ignored, while other, more optimistic thinkers were celebrated. He believed that most people are not ready to face the truths he uncovered. And maybe that's the most painful part of being smart, not just the burden of knowing, but the loneliness that comes with it. Here's the paradox: society needs intelligent people. Every great leap in science, art, and philosophy has come from someone who saw what others couldn't. And yet, these very people are often treated with suspicion, ridicule, or neglect. Why? Because change is uncomfortable, truth is uncomfortable, and intelligent people, by their very nature, disrupt the status quo. They don't play along, they ask questions, they challenge assumptions. And in a world built on routine and conformity, that makes them dangerous. But let's go deeper. Let's ask, why do we instinctively resist those who see more clearly? Think of it this way. Imagine a room full of people watching a movie. They're completely absorbed in the story. They're laughing, crying, living through the characters. Now imagine one person stands up, turns on the lights, and says, "This isn't real. It's just a projection." What do you think happens? Do the others thank him for waking them up? No, they get angry. He's ruined the illusion. He's broken the spell. And that's exactly what intelligent people do. They ruin the illusion. Not because they want to, but because they can't help it. Schopenhauer believed that most people live in what we might call a dream state. They are so embedded in the will's endless cycle of craving and distraction that they never question the nature of reality. But the philosopher, the artist, the genius, they are awake. And being awake in a world that's asleep is not a blessing. It's a curse. It means you see the futility in what others call success. It means you feel the suffering that others numb themselves to. And most of all, it means you are alone in your vision. So here's a deep question for you. Would you rather be blissfully ignorant or painfully aware? Would you trade comfort for truth? Because that's the choice every intelligent person has to make, consciously or not. And society, by design, rewards those who choose comfort. That's why so many brilliant minds either retreat into solitude or burn out trying to fit in. They're not broken. They don't have a social problem. They're just trying to survive in a world that wasn't built for them. Now, let's not romanticize suffering. Schopenhauer wasn't saying that pain is noble or beautiful. He was saying it's unavoidable, especially for those who see the world clearly. But he also believed there was a way out, not through denial or distraction, but through art, contemplation, and compassion, but through turning our awareness into something meaningful. But this is where the intelligent person finds redemption, not in being understood, but in understanding others. They're not in escaping suffering, but in transcending it. This is why so many geniuses turn to music, painting, writing. It's not just self-expression, it's survival. It's a way to communicate what words often can't. Because sometimes when you're too intelligent for small talk, too aware for the news cycle, and too sensitive for the noise of the world, the only place left to go is inward. That's not depression, it's depth. And if you've ever felt that, I want you to know you're not alone. You're not strange, you're just awake. Let's return to that image of the person who turns on the lights in the movie theater. Maybe everyone hates them at first. Maybe they're thrown out. But maybe, just maybe, someone notices the light. Someone starts to ask questions. Someone else begins to wake up. And that's where the real power lies, not in being understood by the masses, but in reaching the few who are ready. The few who are brave enough to see what you see and feel what you feel. That's how change happens. Quietly, slowly, like a whisper in a storm. So, if you've ever felt misunderstood, isolated, too deep for your surroundings, don't shrink. Don't silence yourself to fit in. Yes, it's easier to play the game. Yes, it's tempting to pretend. But the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more truth. And truth needs brave messengers. People willing to be misunderstood. People willing to stand in the light, even if they stand alone. But here's the final twist. Maybe you're not misunderstood because you're too complicated. Maybe you're misunderstood because you're too clear. And clarity, in a world built on illusion, is the ultimate rebellion. The curse of clarity. Why seeing the world too clearly pushes genius to the fringes. But have you ever tried explaining a simple truth to someone who just didn't want to hear it? Not because they couldn't understand it, but because accepting it would mean they'd have to change everything about the way they live. That's the everyday battle for those who see the world too clearly. Schopenhauer understood this with painful accuracy. The clearer your perception, the more you cut through the noise, the harder it becomes to connect with those still invested in the illusion. Clarity isn't always a gift. Sometimes it's a burden. Think of it like eyesight. If you can see further than others, you don't just see more beauty, you also see more danger, more decay, more truth. You see the cracks in the foundation before the building collapses. But what happens when you try to warn those still dancing on the rooftop? They don't thank you. They call you negative and a downer. They say you're overthinking. But are you? Or are you just seeing what they refuse to look at? This is the curse of clarity. The intelligent person doesn't just have more data, they have fewer filters. They don't automatically believe what they're told. They question not only what is said, but why it's being said and who benefits from it being believed. And that kind of thinking, it's threatening. Not just to institutions, but to individuals. Because facing reality means letting go of comforting lies. And most people would rather live a pleasant fiction than a painful truth. Schopenhauer believed that the majority of people see the world through the lens of personal desire. They don't want truth, they want satisfaction. But the intelligent person often sees through the futility of that chase. They recognize that lasting happiness isn't found in the next achievement, or the next relationship, or the next distraction. And when you say that out loud, when you live like you believe it, you become dangerous. Not because you're violent, but because you disrupt the narrative. You make people uncomfortable just by existing. So let me ask you, have you ever stayed silent just to make others comfortable? Have you ever hidden your insights, your depth, your questions, because you knew they wouldn't fit the room you were in? That's what clarity does, it isolates. But it also elevates. Because once you accept that you might never be fully understood, you're free to stop performing. You're free to live honestly. And that's where the real power begins. Keep going, keep seeing, keep speaking your truth. Because even if the world doesn't get you now, there's someone out there waiting for exactly the clarity you've been hiding. The beautiful solitude of truth, how misunderstood minds become the architects of tomorrow. There's a quiet nobility in being misunderstood. It doesn't feel like it in the moment when you're explaining yourself for the 100th time and still being looked at like you're speaking a foreign language. It doesn't feel noble when your insights are dismissed or when your silence is mistaken for arrogance. But in the long arc of time, history shows us something incredible. The people who were once cast out, laughed at, or ignored are often the very ones who end up shaping the world. Think of Galileo, Nietzsche, Van Gogh, Kafka, even Schopenhauer himself. These were thinkers and creators who were not just ahead of their time, they didn't belong to their time. They weren't misunderstood because they were wrong. They were misunderstood because they were too early. Their minds had already moved on to a future the rest of the world hadn't caught up to yet. That's the paradox of genius. It often walks alone through the present, only to be welcomed by the future. But solitude isn't just a side effect of intelligence, it's often a requirement for clarity. When you're constantly surrounded by noise, by shallow conversation, by the pressure to conform, it becomes nearly impossible to hear your own thoughts. That's why so many great thinkers retreat. Not because they hate people, but because they need space to think. Silence is not loneliness, it's a laboratory for truth. And for those who dare to live with their eyes open, solitude isn't a curse, it's sacred. Still, let's be honest, being ahead of your time hurts. It means waiting longer to be seen. It means watching others succeed by following trends while you're building something that no one even understands yet. It means creating without applause, writing without readers, speaking without echoes. And yet, if you keep going, something strange begins to happen. You start to find others, people who are also awake, people who are also building, people who don't want the illusion either. And suddenly your solitude becomes a signal, or a beacon, a kind of quiet revolution. So let me ask you, what are you building in the dark? What insight do you carry that the world isn't ready for yet? What truth have you seen that no one else will say out loud? That's your gift, that's your burden, and that's your responsibility. Because the world doesn't just need more followers, it needs visionaries. People who are willing to walk alone so others can eventually follow a clearer path. Schopenhauer once said, "Talent hits a target no one else can hit, genius hits a target no one else can see." If that's you, if you see the invisible, if you feel the weight of truths others deny, then don't let society's misunderstanding silence you. Let it refine you. Let it make you stronger. Because in the end, the ones who are misunderstood today often become the ones who define tomorrow. So keep walking, keep thinking, keep building. Not for applause, not for recognition, but because you must. Because the truth is beautiful, even when it's lonely. And because someday someone will look at what you created in the dark and finally say, "I see it too." And maybe then you won't be misunderstood anymore. Or maybe you still will, but by then you won't need to be understood. You'll have become something even greater, free.